again.
Back at it again.
All right. Well, where do you want to start? What is up? Everyone in my life is rebranding right now. Rebranding or refreshing their brand.
Refreshing, yes.
Yeah. Which I guess, I mean, I don't know. Could be the same thing, not the same thing. So literally everyone I know is like, yeah, going through refresh, rebranding, hiring branding people and everything. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, well, here I go.
I know, I feel like I just went through this and now you're kind of like spinning the wheels, trying to think if you want to.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to. It's just taking me a little bit longer because the longest part for me is just having to choose like the images and curate the images and also kind of re-edit some of my images too to match like the branding and like the aesthetic that I have now. So that's what's taking the longest. But other than that, I did want to ask you what you felt like with this refresh, like what you were, like why you did it and all of that stuff. Just to kind of get an idea.
So I kind of I say my history with rebranding and refreshing is almost like every like 6 months maybe. And that's just because I feel like I grow and evolve so fast and so quickly. And even like just changing like price points and brackets in the wedding industry, you kind of like have to have your brand evolve as well to like meet where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the main thing for me is I wanted a new brand that not a new brand, but like a refresh that kind of represented who I am now and the clients that I'm wanting to serve for the next 18 months.
Yeah.
And so that's why I decided to do a little bit of a refresh. It was mainly the biggest thing that I wanted to change was my copy and messaging.
Okay, yeah. What did you feel like was different or like what was?
I feel like I was kind of talking to a client that really like needed their hand to be held the whole time, like in a sense of like maybe I was like their most expensive vendor that they were hiring on the wedding day. And so with that comes like a lot of like responsibility and pressure. And basically you take on a lot of the planning roles as a photographer in those kind of early stages. And so I feel like I was messaging and my copy was directed towards like me being with them and like this whole process and like just kind of talking to them like where they were at, which is what your branding and messaging should do.
Yeah.
But now that I'm starting to work with more planners and like I'm not the most expensive vendor of the day anymore. Yeah. It just kind of like needed to change a bit to where I was speaking to those clients and their pain points change basically.
Yes.
And so with like the whole like I redid my whole copy and then I was like, okay, so this whole copy and my messaging and everything, it doesn't really like match with like the aesthetic that I had of like my brand.
Yeah.
And so that's what prompted me to be like, okay, maybe I need to like move my colors around, my like logo around just to like match the new message that I'm trying to say.
Yes.
And in return, I think it like reflects my photos better and like they stand out better on this new website that I have. And so that's one thing that I think if you are thinking about doing a rebrand or you're just starting your first brand that you've ever had is to think about it like backwards. Like a lot of times we just want to be like, okay, what's my logo going to be first? Where if you start with a logo and then you end like with your copy and your messaging, you might find that they don't really match and then you have to do everything over again.
Yeah, well, and that's what I was gonna say too, just to bounce off of that. When I was I almost said branding school. It was not in branding school. Might as well have been. But when I was doing graphic design in college, we did not start with the logo and branding of anything. Like what we did is we basically started like a company, but we would have to start off with what the company was about, how it made us different, what were the vibes of the company, what was like the ideal client that we wanted to attract to that business. And so we never started with the logo, the colors, anything. Like we started with the plain details of like, what is the business? How are they different? And how are they going to stand out in a market of like, I don't know, let's say it's coffee shops. Like, how is it going to stand out against like Starbucks and all of that stuff? And so figuring that out first will make the process so much easier with the branding and the logos. And your messaging is so much more important than everything else, I think. And I think that's how people will get more clients is if their messaging is right, their logo really doesn't matter in the end. Obviously, branding is so important. And I think having both elements will make you way more successful than having one or the other. And so just having a logo isn't going to be like, oh my gosh, I made it. Like, this is like, clients are going to book me. Like, you could have the most aesthetic website, but if your copy and your messaging and your branding isn't like what the client needs, then they're probably not going to book you. And even when you hire a graphic designer to do your branding, they're going to ask you the questions. Who's your ideal client? What is like, how do you stand out? What makes you special, against all these other photographers? And so, yeah, I really do think that you have to start within and then make all the colors and everything, all the fun stuff, like match that vibe. Yeah. So,
well, let's talk about even what branding is, because I feel like when a lot of us, when we think about branding, we think about colors and logo and stuff.
It's like the first thing that whenever you start a business, you're like, oh, well, I need a logo.
But it's so much more than that.
Yeah. Well, I don't honestly, do I even know the actual definition of branding? I don't even think I do, honestly. Do you have the definition? Like, what is branding? Let me look it up really quick because I know my idea, but I don't know if I've ever looked up like the
it's basically...
So branding is the process of creating a distinct identity for your business in the minds of your target audience, encompassing a company's name, logo, visual identity, mission, values, and tone of voice. So I think that's where branding kind of gets mixed up is people think it's just like the logo, but it really is everything else. So like your target audience, the tone of voice, your visual identity, that also goes with like your logo, the colors you're evoking or like what the colors evoked emotionally, and also just like the way your pictures are curated and how you're visually telling a story within Instagram and TikTok and all of those places. So, and even the tone of voice is so important too. Because if you're like trying to book Gen Z brides, they're probably not gonna, well, it just depends on who your ideal client is. You don't have to speak like a Gen Z if that's not who you are, but if that's like the type of clients you're wanting to book, then that's the type of tone that you should have in your like messaging and branding and all of that stuff. So yeah, so that's what branding is. It's all encompassing of everything your company should be, and the messaging and just like the way you present yourself, the way you dress, like literally there's so much that goes into it.
Even the way you interact with other people, other vendors, that is definitely your brand.
Yeah.
Because branding is basically when someone speaks your name, what they think about you, what they perceive you to be. So like how you interact with other people is a big part of branding, because it could either leave like a good taste in someone's mouth or a bad taste.
Well, I always think of like Poppy or like Tarte, where some people don't like Tarte because of like the brand trips and everything, so it leaves a bad taste in their mouth. But some people love the brand trips, love all that stuff. So when they're thinking of the brand, they're not thinking about the logo or the colors or anything. You're thinking about how they made you feel, what the company makes you feel. And like Poppy is like known for this like cool, like Gen Z type of brand. And so you just think of it as cool and like refreshing and just like, I don't know, fun is what the brand gives off to me. And so, it just really is like the perception of what other people would think your brand looks like, feels like, is. And so, just even like your client experience is a part of your brand. And so that's why it's really important to be honest with yourself of what your branding is and what your messaging is. Because if you're trying to be someone else, it's not gonna click.
Yeah.
Like if you're like on your website saying like, oh, I'm the life of the party, like I'll be with your bridal party and I'm just gonna be, I don't know, you're like making yourself out to be like the life of the party and you're shy and you're like not like that at all. People are gonna be like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Like, where's the girl that said she was gonna be the life of the party? And I think it's really important to be honest with yourself. Like, how are you actually, like, during the day, during a session, or whatever it is? Because if you're just trying to fit into what you think other people are doing, other photographers are doing, what their brand is, how they're perceived, then you're just not gonna get any work.
No. Well, it
Because
also
you're lying.
yeah, and it's not to say that, like, if you're not the life of the party, that's bad, but that client is expecting that, and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
if there's a disconnect, then that's what's leaving
yeah.
the bad taste in their mouth, and that's how they're not gonna have the greatest client experience. So, it really is, like, being honest with yourself and, like, "Who am I? How do I work?" And not being, like, afraid to own that because I feel like when I first started out, I was always afraid that because I am more quiet and reserved, like, people weren't gonna wanna book me.
Mhm.
Um, and even, like, people who do have a very, like, um, loud and excited, like, nature, those clients also book me even though I am more introverted and quiet.
Mhm.
So, it's not like because you are one way, that's who you're gonna attract,
Yeah, yeah.
which I think sometimes we can
Well, and you also have to think about who do you want to attract?
yes, that's the second
Like,
part.
so to me, like, my favorite clients are the ones that are, like, just wanna have the best day, they wanna celebrate, like, the most important part is the ceremony, but they really wanna party, like, they wanna go to the reception, they wanna party. Those are the type of clients that I wanna attract, and so whenever I'm thinking about branding, marketing, everything, I'm trying to put out pictures that are, like, showing that they're having the time of their life at their wedding, like, whether it's at the reception or the ceremony, they're just, like, having a good time, and so showing that visually is also a part of your brand.
Have you heard about, like, buyer types?
Yes.
Yes, so that kinda goes with that, like, there's, like, 4 different ones, I think. There's the relator, the dreamer, the boss type, and I forget what the other one is, but, basically, if you know who your ideal client is, you know, like, their buyer type and how to sell to them basically through your photos, your copy, everything on your website. So, like, for me, I feel like my ideal client is the relator type. They're all about relationships, that's the most important thing to them, and so, like, my hero image on my wedding or on my website isn't gonna be of, like, the details. It's
Yeah.
gonna be of, like, like a first dance or, like, an emotional moment with, like, the father of the bride.
Mhm.
So, like, they're seeing themselves in your photos, and they're like, "Okay, that's for me."
Yeah, exactly, and yeah, that's literally what it is because I'm also, like, the type of photographer that wants to book clients that do a lot of details, wanna be very intentional with their details and their florals, and they wanna spend money on that part and also the experience that their guests are gonna have for their wedding day, so if
I
I
think
wanna book
yours is the dreamer, I
Y
think.
yeah, 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 and so what those type of clients, I wanna book them, and what I'm gonna show is the details, the party, the fun, like, the florals, everything about that. I'm not gonna be posting a lot of emotional stuff, but I also shoot that way too, so I'm gonna show it, but it's not gonna be, like, the forefront of my brand,
Yeah.
and I think that's really important to get to know yourself, and the more you work, the better you'll get, and the better you'll get, the more you'll know what you wanna shoot and who your ideal clients are, and so if you've ever shot a session or a wedding that you're like, I'm obsessed with these people, look to see what they did, what is important to them. Did they have a lot of details? Did they not have a lot of details? Like, why did you love that wedding or session so much? And like, write it down and see how you can incorporate that into your copy. Because I think
Mhm.
that's really important to talk about as well. Is like, you you shouldn't just be posting any old image. Like you really need to think about like, okay, who is looking at this? What type of clients do I want to post? And I guess that kind of goes into marketing, but it also really is branding as well. I
Yeah.
mean, branding and marketing kind of go hand in hand, but if you know your branding, your marketing,
It's
will be
easy.
so easy because you know exactly what to post, you know exactly who you're talking to. And so, yeah, just getting to know yourself, what you like to shoot. And again, like usually you're your own ideal client. And so when I'm thinking about like what I'm going to post or like how I'm going to brand my website or just like change things up, I always think about like, okay, how would I want to shoot my own wedding, or like who would I want to book as my wedding photographer? And if I'm looking at my feed, I'm like, I would not book myself. I'm changing things up.
Yeah. Yes. And so, yeah, branding is like so many different things. It's yes, it's your logo and your website, but yeah, it's like what you choose to share. It's crazy.
Yeah, you really have to curate everything and you really have to know yourself. Like I know that's like the almost like the most boring part of your business is like trying to figure yourself out and what your business is and how you stand out from people. And I think a lot of photographers also are like scared to say how they're like different than other people or like how they stand out. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Like we're not doing anything that's like I don't know, like so unique from other photographers that it's
Yeah.
like, I don't know, just very unique. It's just how we do things, and that's what we're gonna say. It's not anything special or anything, but it's because we're staying in, it's because we're curating our brand to be exactly who we want to book. That's the reason we get the type of clients that we book.
Mhm.
Is because we're curating and always thinking about like if my ideal client was looking at my Instagram, would they like what they're seeing? Would they like, I don't know, resonate with the images that they're posting? So yeah, I think it's really important. And you brought up a good point about your website. Like, is the first thing they see like exactly how you shoot?
Exactly, yeah. Also, I feel like it's important to talk about consistency in
Mm-hmm.
branding because your Instagram could be beautiful and perfectly aligned with the brand that you want to promote. But then um if there's an inconsistency on your website, like maybe you haven't looked at your website in the past 3 years, like you did it once and then you just kind of left it.
Yeah.
Go back and look and see like if it's still in alignment with what you're trying to put out. Also inconsistencies with like just the way you dress and present yourself. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you are not saying that you have to like be dressed to the nines every day, but if you're gonna be in a place where you are making connections with people, make sure that like you are the only one representing your brand.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so if you're like not in alignment with this brand that you're portraying, it looks
It's
inconsistent. It looks like
Yeah,
not
something's like off. And
yeah.
and they'll probably never be able to like explain it, but that's also called like a brand gap. And so like for me, I want the fashionable bride. I want the bride that's changing 3 times on her wedding day, or like she has an outfit for her rehearsal dinner, she has an outfit for her bridal brunch. Like she is like, curating these outfits. And if I'm showing up in leggings and a t-shirt, why
Yeah.
would like that just it that's the brand gap. Like if I want my clients to be fashionable, I myself need to be fashionable. And so I think sometimes we do forget those little tiny minor details that we need to fix. And again, like if you are not trying to book the fashionable bride or the fashionable couple, like that's okay. I'm not
Right.
telling you that
I'm
that's what you have to do, but that's the brand gap that
yeah.
you sometimes don't see if someone's not like telling you.
Or like let's use a different example. Like maybe your brand is like all about like color and being loud and like funky.
And
And
lively,
then
yeah.
yeah, and so then you would want your like personal style to reflect that. Um because like I'm just thinking like if I ran into someone like at a coffee shop and they were portraying like, colorful like blah blah blah. And then I see them and they're just like in the most like neutral outfit. Like
Yeah, wearing all black.
yeah, or like just like chilling. I'm
Yeah,
like,
just, like, not lively, colorful, bold,
yeah,
all
or
the
like
things, yeah.
not really that funky. Like then I'm like, it's inconsistent.
Yeah, and it doesn't like you said, it doesn't have to be every day. Like, if your clients aren't seeing you, who cares? Like, you don't have to be fashionable or, like, you don't have to
Right.
be in colorful clothes or anything like that, but, like, when you're presenting yourself to the client, to the planner to whoever you're about to book, but like maybe dress the way that your branding says that you kind of are.
Yeah.
And I think maybe we're pushing the point of dressing a little bit too far, but it even goes to like if you're wanting to book brides or couples, I keep saying brides, couples, partners, anyone, that, are like, I don't know, hikers and are wanting to do more shoots like outside, outdoorsy, but if you're really not that type of person that likes to hike or do anything like that, that's the brand gap right there. It just doesn't make sense. And it's not even about how you dress, but like about what you're showing to your Instagram or on your website. Like if on your website you have a couple that's on top of a mountain, and then on your Instagram there's a lot of ballroom weddings, and you're also like the type of person that's like outdoorsy and hiker or is a hiker or whatever, that just like doesn't make sense. Like that's the brand gap of like, how is this connecting? And of course, like you can do both, but you also have to explain that too. Like you have to be, your brand has to align to that.
Yes. So it's a lot of different things to think about.
Yeah. There's a lot of gaps that you have to fill almost because like you said, with the Instagram and the website, that can be a gap where you're posting all these beautiful images, but you haven't updated your website in 3 years. Like that's a brand gap. And the way you're presenting yourself, brand gap. And so, there's just so many ways where people won't notice, but it'll be subconscious of like, this doesn't make sense to me, and I'm not gonna book you because of it.
Yeah, it's all subconscious.
Yeah.
It's like just like buyer psychology and stuff like that.
Well, and even like when you're at the store and you're like, oh, I need a new shampoo, the branding is the first thing that you're gonna look at. And if you're the type to like be drawn to like colorful, beautiful branding, then you're probably going to choose that shampoo over the one that's like neutral and like very monochromatic, things like that. So it really is about like who you are too. Like, I don't know. It all really goes back to who you are.
Yes.
Like everything.
Who you are and who you want to serve.
Yeah.
Those are the two main things that you have to think about.
Yeah. And also, I wanted to talk about how a lot of mistakes that I see photographers make is that they oh my gosh, I just went blank. Oh my gosh, why did I just go blank? Hold on, I had it written down. I thought I was gonna eat. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is I see a lot of photographers make this mistake and it's that they only talk about themselves in their messaging. And even on their website, it's just like, I photographed because of this, and I'm a photographer because I started blah, blah, blah. And that's all nice and dandy, but for branding and for the marketing of it all, you really have to figure out what your client's problem is and how you solve it and talk about that. Even your About Me page needs to be catered to your target audience and your ideal client, because it's not that they don't care like how you started and why you left photography and all of that stuff. They do care about that stuff, and you can have some of it in there, but it's really the About Me page specifically is really how can you cater to them to solve their problem. And you can add all that into it, like about you, but you also need to be explaining why you're the person that's going to solve their problem at the end of the day. And so I think figuring out the problem that your clients have is going to help you with everything, branding, marketing, everything, because once you know that, everything is a little bit easier to write about, if that makes sense.
And something that really helps is changing the language from like I to you. So like even if your About page right now says like, I am an adventure elopement person. I am an adventure elopement photographer. You could just change that to like, do you like hike, or not do you like hiking, but you know what I'm saying? You're looking for an adventure elopement photographer. Just using like the word you instead of I really like makes the buyer like feels seen and like they're there and they're connecting with what you're saying.
Yeah, I agree. That's just something that I see a lot, is that people just love to talk about themselves, which is fine. But at the end of the day, you're a business and a service that needs to solve a problem for someone. And so if you're only talking about yourself and why you started and, you got your camera at 13, okay, that's great. But like, this isn't a museum. Like, at the end of the day, you are a service and you have to
Yeah.
solve a problem for people. And you can talk about that sometimes, but I think where most photographers go wrong is that they only talk about that and they don't talk about how they're a service or how they're providing a service that will solve a specific problem, like the adventurous elopement photographer. If a couple is wanting to do like an adventurous elopement, they're not going to go to my website and book me because
Right.
I don't have anything about adventures or elopements or being on mountains. They're going to look at my website and be like, she's not my photographer. I need to look for someone that is about that. And so if your website does have all that stuff, they're going to be like, oh, yep,
Yeah.
this is the one I've been looking for. And that's what you want your website and your marketing and your branding to do, is when someone lands on your page, they're like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been looking for. This is a person that I have been looking for and scanning for and searching for. And that's what you want people to do, because you're so good at like knowing what their problem is and how you're going to solve it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really important. I think honestly, if you just find the problem and the solution and just work on that in your marketing, I think a lot of issues will be solved.
Yes. And
in your
I'll
marketing.
say it again, read Building a Story Brand.
Yes. Yeah, it really is such a good book to kind of understand what we're saying, because it might not kind of be as easy to understand when you're like, well, what's the solution? What's the problem?
Yeah, it sounds like a really hard thing to like think about and like try and figure out. So that book is really, it makes it very easy.
Yeah. And so I guess, for example, for like my client's problem. So my client is looking for a photographer that wants to, okay, hold on. Let me start this over. So, for example, the type of clients that I want to book, their problem is they can't find a photographer who does editorial, who also is a timeless photographer that is true to color. They love the modern take that I do. They can't find that. And so my solution is I have that. And I'm going to talk about that on my website. I'm going to be like, weddings should be classic and timeless, but I also want you to feel like you were in a magazine, and these photos are going to it's going to make you feel like your wedding is in a magazine, but you're also going to feel like all the emotions, all your people were there to support you. And so that is the problem I'm solving, is that they want a photographer that does that. I'm the solution.
And you said you.
Yes.
You didn't.
Yeah.
Nowhere in there did you say I can do this.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You need a photographer that is gonna be thinking about the cinematic shots, the editorial shots, the artsy shots. You're gonna feel like you're in a magazine. You're gonna feel iconic, and I'm gonna hype you up. And that's all in my website. And if their problem is not finding a photographer that has all of that, then I don't know, they're just not going to be able to find one. But if they go to my website and look at all of the stuff that I have on there, they're going to be like, this is literally exactly what I was looking for. Like, oh my gosh. And a lot of that I've learned because when I get inquiries, they say all of that stuff. Or like when I'm looking at all my reviews, they're saying all of that stuff. And sometimes I didn't even know that. But once I look at the reviews or even my inquiries, say a lot of things that I'm like, oh, that is such good verbiage and such good like a representation of who I am. I just don't even say it in my branding or anything. And so I always take notes on like what people are saying about me the day of the wedding, what people are saying in their reviews, and even when they inquire.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really good to just look at all what people are saying around you as well, to kind of make sure you're kind of like on the right track of like being honest with yourself of how you are. Because also I think there's a lot of trends in the wedding industry. Well, I guess in any photography industry, there's a lot of trends. And so right now I feel like a big trend is like the documentary style. And at first, it's almost like you want to give in if you're like different than that style that's trending, you almost like want to give in and be like, "Oh, am I going to be a documentary photographer now? Like, is that
Mhm.
what's going to happen?" But you shouldn't give in.
No.
Because if that's not who you are, it's not going to work. It's not going to be, you're just going to burn out because that's not truly what you want to do. And so just stay the course. Like, you really have to put your blinders on with all of that stuff, especially like just like not looking at what other photographers are doing, what they're doing with their marketing, with their branding. You really just have to stay true to you. And so that's really important too, even with like trends or like anything else. You just got to stay true to who you are, because
Mhm.
you can give in and then it just won't work. It won't feel like you. The client will get images that are so posed that they're like, wait, this isn't what I hired her to do. Like, I
Right.
thought she was a documentary photographer. And the reason you're doing that is because you're just seeing everyone else do it, or like you're seeing the people that you look up to doing, and that's not really who you are. So I really think it's important to just stay true to who you are.
Yeah, and if you don't know who you are yet, like you said, it's really good to look at what people are saying
Hmm.
and then base that off of, okay, this is what people are seeing in me if I can't see it myself.
Yeah.
And then run with that for a little bit, and then you might change and want to do things differently, and that's the great time for a rebrand.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was saying earlier too, is just like the more you do it, the more you'll know yourself.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's important to just keep doing it and doing it and doing it over and over again, because you'll find out who you are. And I feel like I'm in a place where I definitely know how I like to shoot. And also, yeah, think about like, what do you actually like shooting? If it's not weddings, okay, don't do weddings, do something else. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be what other people are doing. And like, I feel like another misconception about wedding is like, wedding photography is the only way to make a lot of money,
Not
which is
true.
not true. You can make a lot of money doing families. You can make a lot of money doing branding photos. Like, there's so many ways to make money. And so I just want to say that, you don't have to do weddings if you don't want to. Like,
Yeah.
it might look like, oh, just because me and Miranda are doing weddings, oh, that's the way we should go. And you don't have to.
No.
If you
No.
don't like doing weddings.
That's a whole conversation for another day.
Yeah, but
about
that also goes with branding. Like, you
Yeah.
have to stay true to who you are, because it's just not going to work. You're going to just keep the cycle of being stuck because you're like, well, I'm doing this because of this. But it's like, if you don't like doing that thing, don't do the thing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that actually reminds me. I listened to a podcast like 2 or 3 weeks ago with Daniel Kim. And he was talking about like photographers are always going up to him like, oh my gosh, like, I want to do what you do. Like, can you mentor me, blah, blah, blah. Or like, what are like the first steps of like getting into the industry? And he's like, well, do you even like to take photos? Truly, like, have you gone out there and taken photos just for fun? Or like, do you even like doing that? Because that's the first step. If you don't like taking photos, this isn't for you. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't just go out there and take photos for fun, then it's just not going to be the career you want to be in, because it's not even a passion of yours. So hello, do you even like taking photos? Like, I thought that was like so true, because I've never thought about it that way, where people are like, I'm just starting photography. Like, let me get it. Like, I want to get into the wedding industry. And I'm like, well, have you taken a photo? Like, you need to go out there and take photos before you even try to get into the wedding industry, because trust me, it's not that fun if you don't know how to take photos.
Yeah.
And so, not to be, I feel like that's kind of mean, but it's also like, really, do you like taking photos? Because if you're not passionate about taking photos or doing weddings, then it's just really not gonna, work out the way you think it is, because you really do have to have a passion for the work that you're doing.
Mhm.
And so you have to really go out there and just start taking photos before you try to like build a business. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess you can do it in tandem, but it's really like, you need to know yourself and know, is this really a passion, or is this just kind of like what I like to do?
I mean, if you do that in tandem and you figure out that you don't like it, it's not going to last.
Yeah, yeah. And we always go back to this, like, you can always pivot.
You can always pivot.
You can do something else. You don't have to stay with weddings your entire life. You don't have to, do families forever, and you don't have to do everything all the time either.
Mhm.
Because again, it just leads to burnout and then you hate your life. And that's not good. That is not good. Oh my gosh. Sorry, okay. Do you have anything to say? I feel like I just like went on a rant.
Let me look at my notes about
Okay.
branding because I feel like we kind of hit all of the points that I was wanting to talk about.
Yeah, we really just wanted to have like a candid conversation about branding and what it is and how it goes with marketing and what we're doing with it as well. So
So why do you want to do a refresh in your brand?
for me, the first thing I noticed is that my brand, not saying that people are copying me because I don't think that's true, but there comes a point in the industry or like every few years where people are using the exact same wording
Mhm.
and people are starting to use the wording that I've been using for a while. And I'm like, I need to change it up. Like, I just don't like having, I don't know, the same wording as other people because then you just start to blend in and then it just like doesn't make sense. So that's
Like the documentary word
yeah,
is thrown around a lot. So like it becomes a trend.
exactly. And so you almost have to like change it up to where you're still a documentary photographer, but you're saying it in a way that nobody else says it.
Yeah. So for me, like my new like wording is like unposed and unexpected.
Yes. And that's good because it's almost like, oh, because honestly, do people even know what documentary
I don't
editorial
think
is?
they
Like,
know anymore because everyone uses the word so
exactly.
often.
And so that was like the first kind of like red flag, I guess, for me is like, okay, I need to change things up because also my visual branding, as far as like my logos, my colors, are starting to look like everyone else's too. Like I feel like I'm always like right before the trend starts, I'm always right there and then people start like copying me. And not copying me, but just like everything just starts looking the same.
Mhm.
And so that was kind of like the first thing where I was like, okay, I need to start changing things up because mine used to be documentary photographer with an editorial flair. But I think now I'm almost like switching it up where it's like editorial first, documentary second. Because I think
Mm.
I'm really good at doing both, but I think my branding and like what I love to do is more editorial than it is documentary. But I love doing both. So I really need to change up my messaging to kind of say that as well
Mhm.
because also with the word editorial, not a lot normal people don't know what
Yeah,
that
what
means. Like
even
they
is
don't
that?
know what that means. And so that's something else that I'm changing too is like trying to change that wording because what I've noticed too, I've had editorial flair on my Instagram for a long time and I'm starting to see it on other people's stuff. And so I'm like, okay, got to change things up.
Mhm.
And so I'm trying to find like a wording to kind of change that to say, I don't know, to say something else. I'm not sure what it is right now, but that's like what I'm trying to do. Cause yeah, like if you have the same wording as everyone, I think it used to be like almost, back in the day was like light and airy or
Mhm.
chasing the light or just like cheesy stuff
Yeah.
like that and I'm just starting to see that again like and so I'm just like I got to change things up. And also with my visual branding, I want to change things up in a way where I'm changing like my color palette, I guess, cuz right now it's just kind of like black and white and I actually want to add some color into it and I want the vibe to feel more New York, New York chic, I guess, is
Mhm.
kind of like what I would describe it. And so I want to change my visual branding to something like that. And just the messaging and also really just curating my brand to speak on the editorial side and the documentary side to show both because I think I mean that's what my brand is so I need to be showing both of those things and so yeah that's what I'm working on right now
Love
is
it.
trying to do that. But even like my messaging is kind of going to be the same but like I still need to change things up because like I said everyone's just using like that same verbiage
Yeah.
and I don't wanna be like everyone else.
It will, yeah. I mean, it's really easy for people who are just starting out to not know what they wanna say and to
Yeah.
just, like I mean, there to
Copy
be copy
people.
people,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, we all do it, it's fine. It's just like, you just get to a point where it's like, I don't wanna be like everyone else. That's how that's how you stay stuck, and that's how you almost blend in with everyone. So you're like asking yourself, like, why is no one booking me? Why are they booking her? Why are they? It honestly sometimes doesn't even have to do with price. It's about your messaging and if you're communicating that well enough. So that's why I'm like, okay, people are like my main competitors, if you want to call it that, kind of all have that same look, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to change things up. I want it to be like, I don't look like a Dallas photographer like I am, but it's almost like giving New York, California vibes, like a good mix of both. And so, yeah, I'm trying to give those vibes off. And
Yeah,
it's not right now, so
I'm really excited for you for that
yeah, and
because
I'm glad we're talking about it too, because I'm like, okay, getting ideas of like, okay, what do I need to change? What brand gaps am I seeing in my own brand of like, I think I was doing too much documentary because we're all trying to fit in, and we almost subconsciously do it, is where, that documentary style is so in right now that you want to do it, but it's like, that's not who I am at the core. And so I still want to do that, but it's not the main thing of my brand. And so, yeah, I'm glad we're talking about it because, we all make mistakes. We all want to fit in. We all want to be like other photographers, and we see other photographers thriving, and we try to take inspiration, but sometimes it's like not even inspiration. You're just like copying someone.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's why I wanted to change things up for myself too.
Yeah, well, going back to like the brand gap or inconsistencies, I felt like with my old brand, it was almost a brand gap for like me and my personal style because
Yes. Mm-hmm.
like as my style evolves and changes, it has been changing pretty fast and I just felt like oh, that doesn't really like feel like me anymore. And
Yeah.
so like with just like the coloring and the branding and the logos and everything.
Yeah.
And so
That's kind of me too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
I see
wasn't,
that in you too.
yeah, it wasn't giving off what I'm giving off.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah, and that's why you
Just
change. That's
that's
why
why you
you
change it.
refresh. That's why you rebrand and you change things up. Because I wanted it to be my brand. I wanted it to feel more like speak easy vibes, which is weird to say because it's like two different industries. It's not even, but like I want to give that vibe off, which I don't know. It's hard for me to communicate what I
I mean,
want,
look at
but
our set.
yeah.
Like, you designed this
Exactly.
set, and it is very on brand, so
Yeah, exactly. And so I just wanted to change up the coloring and the logos and the messaging a little bit. So I guess it is a full rebrand, but still not fully rebranding because this messaging is still the same. I'm just tweaking a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say it's a refresh.
Yeah.
For
So,
sure.
yeah.
I feel like a rebrand is like when you wanna go in a completely different direction.
Yeah, exactly. But no, we're just doing a little refresh, and yeah, like like I said, everyone is doing a little refresh right now. I
Yeah.
feel like everyone in my life is like
That's
changing
why we
things
wanted
up,
to talk
learning.
about branding because
Mhm.
I feel like the spring is a good season to, like, check back in with your
Yeah,
brand
and it's so important. I feel like not a lot of people talk about branding and how it's so essential to your marketing and to your business because no one really starts off doing that. They just like when I feel like when I first started photography, it was almost just like, well, I'm just focusing on the photos
Right.
and nothing else. And nothing else really mattered. But I wish I almost did the photography part, but also thought about like, how am I doing things differently and how am I going to stand out against like all these other photographers that are super talented, but how am I going to word things differently than them? And how am I supposed to like solve the problem for my clients? So yeah, I really wish I would have started with branding because it just makes things so much easier. You know what to shoot, you know how to curate your images to showcase what your branding is and how to market that as well.
Oh, I have one more thing that I wanna
Yes,
say.
please.
So, another thing that really prompted my refresh was, and you can think about how you make people feel in your presence, like your aura, and if that is in alignment with your brand. So, like,
Yes.
for me, like, people are always telling me that, like, I have a very peaceful vibe. They feel calm around me. Like, I've had a lot of people say that, like, my voice on the podcast is, like, very, like, calming.
Yes.
And even, like, I had branding photos done in November, and, like, Kinsey, my friend who took them, she was able to, like, capture my essence in this one photo, and it was very peaceful and calming. And so then I was like, okay, this is who I am at my core. This is what people are saying in my testimonials. Like, and so I looked at that and I was like, is my brand right now very peaceful and calming?
Yeah.
And it wasn't. And so I feel like just making that little tweak really has helped. And now I'm even more confident when I am selling myself to potential clients, because I'm like, this is actually who I am. This is what you're seeing in my brand. And when you're confident, that sells.
Yes.
And so if you don't know who you are and you don't know, you're not confident and like, yeah, like I'm like really loud on wedding day, or like, yeah, I'm really editorial, and you're not, like, that alone, that energy that you're presenting, people will pick up on that.
Yeah, because you know you're lying.
Yeah,
That's not who
you're lying. Yeah.
That's not who you are. And yeah, you'll definitely learn that if you're trying to like be someone you're not.
Yes.
And you can, I don't know, I feel like you can change your style without having to like lie to get to where you want to be, if that makes sense. I feel like, there was something that someone was talking about on TikTok where, or even, was it the podcast that I just listened to with Daniel Kim? I don't know. Maybe it was both. I was just hearing it a lot, where your style isn't where you want to be yet. Like, you know your eye and you want to take photos like that, but your skill and your talent just isn't there yet. But you just know that that's where you want to be. So you can still be you without having to like lie about where you're trying to go, if that makes sense.
It's like aspirational. Like you're making little aspirational tweaks that you know will like get you to where you want to go.
Yes.
And it's not like you're not like sacrificing any part of like you in doing that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. And the more you know yourself and the truer you are to yourself, the more confident you'll be talking to people and like selling yourself, because that's who you are. You're not trying to be anybody else. You're not trying to be the photographer that you're competing with. You're just you.
Yeah. And that's where like,
and it's so easy to be you.
Yes. And that's where like sales is hard if you feel like you're being like a what's it called?
I don't know.
Sleazy car salesman?
Oh, yeah. Sleazy car salesman.
I could not say that.
Slut?
That too. Like when people feel that way, it's because they're not confident in who they are. And so they're like trying to sell something that they're not even sold on themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't really
can't
work.
even do.
That does not work.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Oh my gosh. That was so good. And honestly, I feel like we can end on that. That was just a really good talk about branding. And I feel like I definitely needed to get some of that out. I always get so passionate.
Well, if you have any questions for us about branding, you can DM us or just DM us.
Or comment or whatever. However you can reach us. But that will be it for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe. I say that differently every single time. But anyways, we'll see you guys next week. Bye.